Alright guys, so things are heating up really fast. G7 airlines are all in panic mode and we are moving ever closer towards economic Armageddon. Now it's the Lunar New Year season, but amid this joyous occasion, we have to prepare because what Trump has in store is going to change global trade forever. And we have confirmation that February will be the month of disaster. His tariffs on Mexico and Canada are still on the cards. February the 1st could be day X for the world economy.
He said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds.
What about the China 10% tariff that he also had mused about last Tuesday going into effect on the same day?
Yeah, the president has said that he is very much still considering that for February 1st. All I can point you to is what the president has said on this front. The February 1st date for Canada and Mexico, also the China tariff that he has discussed. He rejected the 2.5% tariff. He said that was a little bit too low. He wants it to be higher. I'll leave it to him to make any decisions on that front.
Yeah.
And let's dissect what Trump has confirmed. That the additional 10% tariff on China is coming. A 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico might arrive in just 2 days. Now the mechanism is also very important. It won't be a gradual increase from 2.5% upwards. Trump could come out and impose an immediate 25% hit right off the bat, and that's going to shock the entire system. Any loophole that's present will also be closed. Packages valued at $800 are currently exempt from tariffs, but Washington is going to review that and probably scrap it. And if that happens, every export, no matter the size, coming into the US could be subjected to brutal tariffs. But this move isn't going to save US manufacturing at all. It could make things even worse. Back in 2019, members of the Fed already sounded the alarm bells. Higher tariffs, slower global growth, and dollar appreciation has directly affected business investment in the US. In other words, tariffs hammers down demand in both the US and around the world. Just think about this, if Trump imposes a 25% tariff, US consumers will be paying more for less, so their spending will have to come down. And let's not forget about retaliation from the rest of the world. Countries from China all the way to Canada can impose tariffs as well, and they would target the biggest exports from the United States. During Trump's first trade war, the world hit back on US trade, especially food imports, and that caused big economic damage to the agriculture sector, one of America's cornerstone industries. US food exports, their losses totaled $27 billion in just 2 years thanks to retaliation tariffs. China accounted for 95% of the damage, but Mexico and the EU also hammered US exports for $1 billion. Now, what we saw was collective action against the US, and this time, it won't be any different. The global economy is on the edge of a cliff. We have interest rates still at record highs and inflation staying extremely stubborn. And the last thing the world needs is unemployment going up. Trump imposing his tariffs could collapse global exports, which would eventually lead to massive layoffs. The EU, of course, would be the most affected. Their economy is in free fall. Industries from chemicals to automakers, they are collapsing because they simply can't compete with the world. It's not a surprise that even Europe is preparing to retaliate. Their economic commissioner has confirmed that the EU will respond in a proportionate way. The tit-for-tat economic war is gonna start. Now, it's going to be the world versus the United States, and once again, it's going to be a battle of financial attrition. Europe alone won't be able to win, but collectively, the global economy could very well grind down the US. If there's one mistake Trump made was confirming his plan in Davos, scolding the globalists is one thing, that was very entertaining, but threatening to deindustrialize the world is another.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt.
Trump's offer, which is actually a veiled threat, has the potential to deindustrialize many countries in the world, especially economies which are extremely weak. Now, ever since the Russia-Ukraine war, there have been clear winners and there have been clear losers. A big winner is China, who has been getting cheap Russian gas. As their energy costs drop, their manufacturing gets more and more competitive. And that's why China has a big trade surplus of $1 trillion. But only a third of their trade surplus came from the United States. Chinese trade is well diversified, so Trump's tactics, his tariffs, don't really scare Beijing one bit. If the tariffs come for China, it will just be another Tuesday afternoon. But the situation isn't the same for Europe. One chart says it all. Energy prices in the Eurozone are simply insane. The EU is paying 4 times more for energy compared to the US, and that makes Trump's tariff threat even more serious. Even a 10% tariff on European products is enough to decimate their industries. Trump is going to dismantle more than just the climate change agenda. He's going to dismantle Europe's economy in real time. And if the EU doesn't hit back, we'd expect more companies like Volkswagen moving operations to the US. Another country in panic mode is the UK, and just like the rest of the G7, British economy is highly focused on trade with the US. They followed Biden into the frying pan, and now Trump is going to flip them directly into the fire. Over the last 2 years, the UK ran a significant trade surplus with the US, and this reached over £71 billion in 2023. So British exporters were selling more than what's being brought in. With the tariffs, the surplus in goods could grind to a halt. And while British exports are mainly services, Trump could always target that as well. It might be unusual, but this is Donald Trump we are talking about. Nothing is off the table. The UK economy is telling Trump not to impose tariffs because they are facing the same situation as Europe, economic stagnation and high energy prices. So in February, as a response to Trump, we could see a coalition of the victims banding together to strike back. Canada is moving to speak to allied countries targeted by Trump, and this includes the EU, Britain, and Mexico. And according to the foreign minister, we have to be extremely pragmatic when it comes to working with the Europeans and also with Britain on this. President Trump has referred to using tariffs against the world. In fact, many Canadian companies support a dollar-for-dollar retaliation, and this could be the playbook going forward. If Trump tariffs $100 billion worth of goods from us, we should hit them back by punishing the same amount. We should tariff $100 billion worth of US imports. Now, the G7 or the G6 in this case is going to wage a counter-tariff war against Trump. And will this work? It really depends if they can hold their ground. Now, I want us to remember what happened with Colombia a few days ago. Trump won his first victory in the tariff war. Now, he threatened to sanction and tariff Colombian exports to the US if they didn't take back illegal aliens from Colombia. And within hours, just hours, the Colombian government gave up and agreed to Trump's terms. This will only embolden Trump, and his tariff threat will strike again. You can count on it. There's a reason why Trump is holding back on China but promises tariffs on the West, because he views them as weaker economies that can be bullied around. It's very likely he will confront them with tariffs, and if the collective group folds like a cheap suit, it's all over for them. Canada, Mexico, and Europe will be forced to import more expensive US goods and burden their own economies. Looking at global trade, it's easy to get intimidated by the US economy. They have the biggest import market in the world at over $3 trillion. It's double the size of Germany. Because Canada and the EU didn't diversify their trade enough, trying to shift exports suddenly to China and Asia won't be possible. So they're stuck in a quandary. We must understand the underlying psychology behind Trump's tariffs. Apart from bringing manufacturing back, Trump really sees this as a big bargaining chip with the world. Weaponizing the US consumer market is his go-to strategy.
And of course it's a bargaining chip. We can't sell a Ford or GM in Europe. You go to Europe, you can't sell a Ford or GM. Why? There's 100% tariffs. How about in Japan? 100% tariffs. So do you think if we said, we're going to tariff you the way you tariff us, do you think they're going to allow Mercedes and all these Japanese companies and Porsches and BMWs to all of a sudden have 100% tariffs in America? Of course not. They're going to come and negotiate, and their tariffs are going to come down. And finally, Ford and General Motors are going to be able to sell in these places.
How's that sound, Andrew? That sounds...
Of course they're going to come down. Of course. This is just negotiating.
But it's important to realize the US won't escape scot-free as well. When Trump raises tariffs, there are big side effects on the US economy that are indisputable. When you raise import taxes on everything, the cost of manufacturing for yourself will go up. And there's no escaping this fact. This analogy is perfect. And let's say Trump imposes a 25% tariff on tires. Less imports will come in. But does that help US manufacturing? Sure, more local companies will start making tires, but it will be done in a suboptimal way. More resources will be channeled from other sectors to make tires, and in fact, what happened after Trump's first trade war? US manufacturing jobs fell by 43,000 within a year from January 2019 to 2020. That didn't help reshore production, it just drove the cost of goods up, making it more expensive to buy. And that drives down both local and international demand. And what happens when demand falls? Earnings drop and people, they get fired. Universal tariffs are a very bad idea because it will impact the entire US economy. And we have no idea how bad the ripple effects will get. Now we can sit and pontificate all we like, but the real damage will only be felt once Trump pulls the trigger. And chances are he would. Now, apart from inflation, the next big domino to fall are US jobs tied to exports. While we can't look into the future, we can draw lessons from the past. In the 2019 trade war with China, the US lost 245,000 jobs at the peak. In addition, it lowered US GDP by over $100 billion. And here's the difference. In 2019, the US imposed a 15 to 25% tariff on around $360 billion worth of goods coming from one country. Now, Trump wants to target the world. That will involve over $3 trillion worth of US imports. So there's a very big difference here. The effects will be magnitudes worse. When it comes to exports, the US is also horribly exposed. America's biggest trading partners supply a ton of jobs to Trump's economy. The US exported $430 billion worth of goods to Canada, and that accounts for nearly 2 million US jobs. Exports to Mexico also help to support 1.7 million US jobs and nearly 1 million from China. And as we go down the list, we can see how fragile Trump's threats are. If America's top 3 trading partners impose tariffs in retaliation, over 4 million jobs could be affected. Worst case scenario, massive layoffs. So we have to be objective about this. If Trump imposes his tariffs, he will change the US economy forever. He will also change geopolitics globally as well. The G7 alliance will get very shaky and trade partners will trust the US less and less. And this only paves the way wider for China and the multipolar world to rise. But let me know what you think. Will the West stand up to Trump? Or will they fold and bow down to the US economy? Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.